Hi, everyone. It's Armida with Early Retirement Diaries. So I'm popping in because I know it's been a couple of weeks since I did a video, and there's still so much going on, and a lot has happened that I definitely wanted to go over. I want to say good morning, but it's actually 2 o'clock in the Dallas area. I work over here, PRN time, from where I reside in El Paso, Texas. I do contract PRN work in Dallas and other areas of Texas, and currently I'm staying at a one of the residence suites that's supplied by my job to travel. Um, so it's 2 o'clock. I feel like it's morning time, and that's because I woke up about 2 hours ago. I usually sleep 24, sorry, I work 24 hours, and then when I get home, I sleep often in the morning hours. So when I'm awake and alert and functional again is getting towards the afternoon time. Then I'm up a few hours before it's time to sleep and go back to work for tomorrow's assignment. But so that's where I'm at. I got up, ordered some Chinese food. I just tanked up with some fuel and some food, and now I'm ready to tackle the retirement project. I wish I had a plant or something nice for the backdrop, but we'll have to work with what we have today. So the first item is the car. As part of this plan to retire early, we need to let off all debt or any financial liabilities so that moving forward we can live on liquid funds to engage in our full-time travel lifestyle, especially to liquidate items that you don't need when you're off traveling, like a base home or second cars or even one car. I guess that's up to a personal discussion, but for us, right now we'll maintain one car and then we're selling off one car. So the Lexus had been my car for work, and as I work less, it wasn't getting utilized well. That one was the first to sell, and we actually sold it to a colleague. It was a cash transaction. I'm just waiting to receive the title so that we can fully transfer it to my colleague from work. So that's been a big relief to have that car gone. My husband also had a hobby truck from the 1970s, a Chevy. He was able to sell that off. And now what we have remaining is his pickup and an RV that we'll use for some road tripping, although we don't know how long we'll keep that. Um, if the road tripping doesn't seem to be our favorite and we seem to engage more in long distance travel, then we'll also liquidate those items because they also carry a significant expense and would be truthfully parked most of the time if we're mostly international and then come home periodically for domestic travel. So that's something we've been talking about a lot, but for some reason that getting rid of that final car, especially his truck, is just it's a little bit harder, I think, psychologically. And since we're in transition, we're not really sure how much it's going to get used. So we're going to float it, give it a try, reassess if it's worth keeping, and then go from there. The next big update is the house. So the house was put up for sale, and thank goodness we got an offer at list price on the first day it was on the market. And then we actually ended up with a couple of offers who then bid against each other and ended up that the house is now under contract for a sale price above asking. So let's hope and pray that the process goes well and smoothly and that it sells. And it will be such a relief to get it sold, but also potentially at more than we were expecting, which will then help our final number that we're working to achieve to get the funds that we need for those bridging years. But first, let's take a brief pause. We took a last minute trip to Alaska. We flew out the day the house went up for sale and was going to have its first open house and home showings. Since we were going to have to vacate the house, we found some amazing deals on a couple of flights to Anchorage, and look what we got to experience. It was the perfect space to recharge after this process we have been through. And back to regularly scheduled programming. So we're going to need about 4.5 bridging years since we're fairly young in retirement age. My husband would be 55 and I would be 51 when we are retiring. So we'll need bridging funds up until he's 59 and a half and can access his IRA funds to pay our living expenses. So that has been very exciting. What we're doing currently, the house is under contract, is clearing the house now. There's an estate sale coming up next week. Actually, the proposed home buyers are interested in that, and I'll probably be one of the first attendees, and hopefully we'll pick up a lot of great items. They really liked our home, the way it was put together. I think it was a style that they were compatible with and are looking to keep some of the larger items um, in keeping with the house. And I think that's very, very sweet. The estate sale is going to be done by a company in my hometown. I just went to Google and I actually learned about estate sales from other full-time retirees who had advised it on their channels. And so when I Googled it, I was surprised to find several companies, several options, looked through the reviews. I selected one that I felt called to me most, and I met with her, the owner of the company, and she did a walkthrough and just made it feel so easy. Um, the way it usually works when you do an estate sale is the market standard is that they keep about 40% and then the homeowner keeps 60%. In her case, she's doing it's a 35-65 split. So based on everything I read, that's pretty much the industry standard is somewhere in the 40%. I even heard of some places that do half and half. But that wasn't the case in my city. When I compared it, it seemed like they were all operating at a 35 to 40% cut of whatever revenues you make from your estate sale. So that is going to be happening soon. That'll bring another pot of funds that'll come towards our total bridging fund to get us through those 4.5 years that we need to fund ourselves until we can use our retirement funds. We did a major downsize about 5 years ago when our oldest went off to college. And in that one, we didn't utilize an estate sale. I didn't even know about that as being a resource for relocating or a change in lifestyle or going down a lot in a residence space. We went to a house that was a third the size of our previous home. So there was a lot to let off. And the way we did that is we ended up giving a lot of stuff away. We had some garage sales whenever we had time. We'd get out there, throw some stuff out on the driveway and see who came by. Sometimes beg people to take more stuff, or, if they didn't even, if the amount of stuff they wanted was above their budget or cash they came with, we would just literally load up the car for them, gave stuff to friends at work, anywhere we could. And you can imagine with a residence of that size, it was a huge undertaking. It was probably the hardest thing of the whole process. Not just the emotional side of the first time in my life having to give up material items, which I really believe gets easier later, and I feel is easier for me this time around. But the sheer labor, the sheer number of items to have to figure out how to transfer. I think we had St. Vincent de Paul or Goodwill or a couple of agencies even come by and pick up stuff. And it was just really chaotic. In the end, if we think back to what we made off of doing our own one-to-one transactions, I don't think it was a whole lot or worth the trouble. As I said, we were so desperate to get out in time as our house has sold that we were giving the stuff basically for free. We really like the idea of the estate sale. I know they take at least a third of the revenue of your items, and then you don't, or at least I don't feel like I have very much control over what the sale price of each item will be, and I don't want to have that kind of control. So it's really hard to pin down like, okay, I know I will make this much from what I have, because a lot of that is really not determined by me. And then whatever's not sold, it's a 2-day estate sale on a Saturday and a Sunday. Whatever's not sold on Saturday goes half price on Sunday. So on this time around, my husband and I discussed it, and our goal isn't to make the most money off of the items as possible. Our goal is to make the sale and the transition as easy for us as possible. So not to have to be lugging around items, transferring them to people, haggling with people, none of that. So we're not even going to be present on the days of the estate sale. They'll open up the house, the public will come in, they're going to set the prices and manage all of the financial transfers. In the end, they'll give us a total and then split the revenues or funds acquired from the sale between the estate company and us. So for this time around, that's been a really nice option. And just going around the property and seeing all of the stuff that still needs to be cleared. They're like, don't get rid of anything, don't throw anything away. You'll be surprised what people would want. Don't start doing that until the estate sale is completed. So what we've done so far is remove items from the house that we know we want to keep, which isn't very many anymore, and then giving stuff to the kids that they wanted to keep. And one of our kids is moving into her first apartment, so she ended up taking actually a good number of bigger items, furniture and stuff. And that was nice because that's money we didn't have to spend on setting her up in a new place. Lo and behold, it looks great. Her apartment's gorgeous, and we didn't have to spend money for yet more things to furnish it. So that is uh, my experience or what we know so far with the estate sale, and I will keep you posted on how it goes. The other topic for update is the job situation. So my husband has fully retired. He just fully retired in July. We're in August, and the nature of my contract requires more notice. So initially, my contract was going to be completed in October, but because of the home sale happening so quickly, and we're vacating our home in the city, um, I'll be terminating in September, terminating contract. So that means my final shifts in my hometown under a minimum contract will be by mid-September, and then the house will sell, will transfer, and from there we'll start transitioning to my semi-retired life, because by then my husband will be fully retired and I will go from 100% full-time employment to 18-hour a week average, which is light part-time. I get so excited just thinking about it. Right now, the contract that I have between my home minimum contract and my work situation adds up to about 42 hours a week in work, which looking back over the scope of my career is the lightest it's ever been. I mean, for many years, I trained under 100 hours a week. I averaged 60 to 70 hours a week, many of my peak years. And as over the years, I've slowed down and sought more balance with my home, married, and mom life. I went to this average was 42 hours. For me, it's still too much. I've talked about that. Just biologically, I'm changing what I can tolerate changes. In my job is very high stress environment, and we work a lot of nights, a lot of weekends, and a lot of holidays. So for me, an average workday is actually 24 hours long, many times with no sleep, um, up through the night, making very stressful decisions. And not only biologically or physically is that more difficult for me to do at this age than 20 years ago, but also from a health perspective, just trying to guard, protect, and look out for my health in the future, I don't think that's good for me. So my goal is to get away from this lifestyle of not sleeping or being under prolonged periods of high stress. So I'm going to 18 hours a week, and then we'll talk a little bit about where that's going and how that's going to be changing. Just making the transition from a 42-hour a week average to 18 hours a week average is huge. I'm actually, that turns out to 3 shifts of work for me per month. So that's only 3 nights of the month that I'm up through the night under prolonged uh, stress, which is a marked improvement. But I need to figure out for myself, is that enough? Because many times my intuition says that I need to be completely at rest now, not engaging in any work. How would we make that happen? So I am transitioning to a light part-time schedule, which, as I've said, is already in and of itself going to be a marked improvement for me in terms of quality of life. It will mean that I can do my work in one week and then have 3 weeks off, which will open up a lot of travel time for us. In a 3 week period, we can easily fly to Mexico and stay in a new city and get to know the area as we explore where we would like to settle someday. 3 weeks can get us over to Asia or to Europe. The problem with the back and forth transatlantic is that it does get expensive with those flights coming back and forth monthly. Our goal had been to do full-time international travel or transatlantic travel in at least 3-month blocks to save on the expense of the transport expenses. So if I'm in this part-time position working 18 hours a week where I'm having to come back into the United States 1 week of each month, um, then that means that I have limited chunks of time for travel. And the most accessible travel would be in the Americas, either South America, Central America, um, Mexico, which in and of itself, I could spend a couple of years there moving about the country and still probably never get tired of it and still see new things. So I'm not complaining. But in terms of the final vision of exploring the whole world, I don't know how that'll fit with still doing PRN work. So the question might be, well, why are you still doing PRN work if there's this concern that it would limit travel options or travel ability? Well, it's again, it comes to those bridging funds that we need. So if we want to have 4.5 years of bridging funds, we have to make sure there's enough funds for that, and we're working towards it. So I would work part-time. So far, um, it looks like up until May of next year that I could work these 18 hours a week and then achieve our final number. But some of that is in motion because it just depends in the end what the house sells for. Depends in the end how much revenue is obtained from the estate sale. We're closing out, debts, some credit card debt. We're closing out the car loans. So we can approximate a lot of that and kind of float some targets, but it's really hard to pinpoint something, an exact number. So we're just going to have to walk it out. But so far, it's looking like maybe in May we can hit the magic number. And if we don't in May, then I could extend the work a few more months or whatever time is necessary to hit it. We are aiming for a budget of $5,000 monthly, $60,000 a year for 4.5 years. So you just do the math on that, and it's somewhere around $250,000. So another thing we can do if we don't hit that target is we can decrease our budget, because 5,000 is still a very generous budget even for worldwide travel. So we could bring it down, and we'll just have to sit down and decide what would be enough for us to make us happy. If I got to the point where I got really burned out, and I am struggling with severe burnout, I'm not going to minimize that. Um, I could stop. I could stop now by the end of the year before May. All that would mean, though, is that we would have a much less budget. And the good news is that we can live in places like Mexico where we have dual citizenship on that budget comfortably. We would just now become more limited in doing extended travel, how many domestic trips we can do. You'd be talking about a $2,000 or $3,000 budget monthly. So we would have to be careful on making that kind of decision, but push comes to shove. I mean, you can live in Mexico, we could live in Eastern Europe, Croatia, Albania, Montenegro, comfortably on half of a $5,000 budget. So in these coming months, what I have realized is next month I'll be finishing that full-time contract. I'll transition to the light part-time PRN work, and I'll just have to feel how that feels for me. And my husband is on board. He sees how tired I am. He sees how this profession is closing out in my life. And as to exactly how much lifetime is left in this battery, I don't know. It's not very long, but I don't know if it's 3 months. I don't know if it's 8 months or if it's another year. Fortunately, we have options, and our option is I cut out sooner. There's a little bit less for us to live on in these 4.5 years, and it'll just change our lifestyle and how much exactly we can travel. The good news is that once we hit retirement age, we would have that full $5,000 budget. And so at that time, when he's 59 and I'm 55, then we could do that full worldwide travel plan. And then we would just be a little more limited or a little more in place to save funds in the bridging years. So I hope that makes sense. Maybe it's easy to understand, but it did take me a long time to study this, to look at other couples that have gone through this and how they ended up coming up with their plan. It took me a very long time to come to this knowledge that I have today. Um, but it is all taking shape and coming to fruition, which is very exciting. Selling the cars off, having the house up for sale, seeing the house become empty, seeing that work contract, the end of it coming up in the next couple weeks is humbling because it really is all just gelling into place. Before you know it, it'll be my last day of work ever. Not sure what day that is, but it's on the horizon. And then we'll be on that flight to that next place. And either it's going to be stay in place to save some money on a budget that's a little lower than we had planned on, or it's going to be with a budget that's comfortable to move around and do more with. So we'll see where it takes us. Then there's the other consideration that we're still young, and just because I'm retiring from this profession doesn't mean that we won't work if we ever have to in another capacity that maybe wasn't related to our professions before our retirement. So if we launch pretty soon because that's it, I'm done. My candle has burned out. And we go with that smaller budget and we like it and we work with it, great. If something befalls us and we need to expand the budget or we just want a larger budget to work with, then we can start some work. I don't know what that would be. We've talked about a couple of things. There's remote work with American companies so that we can make American dollars and stretch those American dollars farther in other economies. We can try content creation. We can get maybe local part-time jobs doing, things that would interest us that, we hadn't been able to try out in the past. Maybe some kind of travel service for new expats, especially to Mexico, where we speak the language and can um, help navigate setting up people who are relocating to an area. There's always so much to do when you go somewhere new. So once we learn how to settle ourselves in, we could extend the service to others. So we've come across some really interesting options. And I think a lot of what paralyzes us in the place we don't want to be is fear of the unknown, fear of the next thing. But as my husband always reminds me, we've always been fine whenever life has called us to switch or to pivot. And there's this mountain before us that looks so impossible and so scary. Before you know it, you blink and you traverse that mountain. You look back and you're like, wow, I did that. And it wasn't nearly as bad as I had built it up in my mind to be. So let's hope that this whole process is going to be just like that there's going to be some unknowns. And when a pivot needs to be made, we'll make it, look back and think, well, that wasn't so bad. I should have done this sooner. So I do have some plans once I go to this part-time schedule of what we will be doing. So in October would be the first month where I'm responsible for 1 week of work and have 3 weeks off. What will those months be like? Well, it's towards the end of the year, it's the fall, and then we're headed into the holidays. So the goal is to be home for holidays. So if we're traveling much of the year, at least come home to touch bases with the kids, family, and friends. So for October, that one was left kind of open in a gray zone because we didn't know if the house would be sold by then. We didn't know if I would be completing that home contract or not. And so now that it's looking like the house will be sold by then and that I'll be done with my home contract by then, that means we can go. We have decided that for that month, we're going to do some extended travel through the Texas Hill Country in our RV. We've always loved that part of the country, and we've done a lot of camping trips through it, always in a rush on the typical 4 or 5 day weekend, or maybe a 7 day week if we used it as our vacation week. But it'll be nice now to roam for 2 to 3 weeks, stop in different towns, different parks that we've seen, state parks, rivers, um, and just enjoy at a pace that we haven't been able to enjoy before. So that'll keep us fairly close to home. It'll introduce us to long haul RV trips. I don't think we've ever been on a continuous 2 or 3 week trip in our travel trailer. And then November, our daughter goes to school in Colorado. And it's just so beautiful out there. So we're going to go, we'll get an Airbnb for a whole month near where she lives and enjoy and explore Colorado in November. In December, we have a family trip to Ireland. The whole family is going, and we're hoping to make that a new family tradition. Is since we will be traveling much of the year and not seeing our kids as often, is to do one nice family trip together. And so we're doing the Ireland trip and then spending time in our hometown together in another Airbnb to celebrate Christmas together. That's a nice time of year because usually the kids are off. One of them will be off work and the other one will be off on her Christmas break in college. So in January, things start to get interesting. We have a month set up in Oaxaca City, and then transferring to the coast at Puerto Escondido. We have another a month in the Chapala area, Chapala, Jijic, that's just outside of Guadalajara. I've always wanted to visit out there. It's a really common expat place where a lot of American immigrants go to live when they leave the United States, and has a very beautiful eternal spring-like weather along the biggest lake in Mexico. So excited to try that out. And then we have another month planned in Guanajuato. Guanajuato's in the state of Guanajuato. It's a beautiful colonial city, about 300 to 400,000 people. Very historic in nature. I've been there before for a short trip with friends and was absolutely enchanted. It's got one of the biggest universities in Mexico, well-known university. It's got a very young student vibe with that colonial history and rich cultural heritage around independence from Spain. That it's just a really, really interesting place to be. It's full of the arts, full of literature, festivals, and we'll be there for a month as well. So that gets us all the way out to about April. Monthly trips going around Mexico, and then also the domestic trips with the kids and the family trip. Around May of next year is that time that might be when I'm fully retired. We don't know yet. But if it has happened by then, that means that in the summer, June and on, I am 100% free. So we're looking at maybe starting our Southeast Asia arm and then hopping over from Southeast Asia to Eastern Europe and Western Europe. So right now there's a good shape on our plans between September and April-ish, so the next 7 months. But after that, it's not so clear. But I have faith every day. This whole picture comes together clearer, that we'll have a better picture of what's happening this time next year. What are the plans for our first trips that are transatlantic or transcontinental? When we go to Southeast Asia, we want to do at least 3 months there in Vietnam, Indonesia, maybe Cambodia, Thailand. So in those countries, and then want to head over to Western Europe. We love Italy, want to travel more in France, and then also hop over to get out of the Schengen zone over to Croatia, Albania, Montenegro, that area. So there are many, many options. But in order to do that type of travel, I do need to be fully retired. So we'll see exactly what day that happens. Before that, though, as you can see, there are some exciting plans in Mexico. I forgot to mention that in January, we're going to do a fast travel trip. Actually, it's just 7 to 10 days to Machu Picchu in Peru. So that'll be my first time visiting South and Central America area. And that's another area of the world that we really want to explore. Okay, so I hope that updates you a little bit on what has happened in these weeks. A lot really has taken shape, and this retirement journey, watching this process of planning, of coming up with that number, of liquidating, and making the very final plans on when exactly to launch. It's a little bit of an art, but at the end of the day, the progression is happening, folks. So Thanks for listening in, and let me know in the comments if you have similar plans, hopes, dreams, or past experiences. I love to hear from you. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks. Bye bye.